Monday, October 6th, Performance Committee will now come to order. We are convened as of 8:33 a.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Please note that the committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meeting, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to call the roll for the committee members. Director Vince Busick.
Here.
Director Lynn Geisinger. Vice Chair Chris Guchenritter.
Here.
Director Matt Larson.
Here.
Director Chris Nicholson.
I am online.
Director Catlin. She may not be with us right now, but she may be joining us later. Please advise me if you see her hop on, Mr. Kroll. And I am Chair Michael Guzman. I am also here. I do see Director Chandler has joined us, and I do not see anybody else present. Oh, Director Banker. Hi, there you are. I see you. Good morning, everybody. All right. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your hand virtually or press star 9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. Mr. Kroll, are there any hands raised at this time?
Chair Guzman, this is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. At this time, I see no hands raised in desire of providing public comment, and there were no emailed comments in advance as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. With no participants in the queue, we will close the public comment period. There are no recommended actions for our committee today. There are a few discussion items. There are two that we have listed on the agenda. The first is a discussion which relates to the agency's 2025-2026 strategic initiatives. And the second relates to our regular deep dives into key organizational performance metrics. The 2025 strategic initiatives. I'd like to hand the floor now to General Manager and CEO Deborah Johnson, as well as Chief of Staff John McKay to present this item. Are there any questions? Sorry, it's yours.
Good morning, everyone. Deborah Johnson, General Manager, Chief Executive Officer here at RTD. As this board is aware, we undertook back in August of 2021 the initiative of a strategic plan. And in doing so, the intent behind the strategic plan was to ensure that we had a North Star in reference to aligning staff as well as the board toward a common goal. With that as a backdrop, quite naturally, with the multi-year strategic plan, we informed our decisions relative to what we would focus on with each year. And we were able to garner an understanding what those areas of focus would be by virtue of garnering input via our community value survey, our customer value survey, as well as our employee surveys. During the course of the year, during the course of the past couple of years, we've been focused on a myriad of different elements, primarily, as you know, back to basics, people power, a welcoming transit environment, and most recently, as of last year, focusing on community and customer connections. With that as the introduction, I'm going to yield the floor to Mr. McKay, who presented to you last gathering of this committee, whereby there were inputs relative to the strategic plan, more specifically by virtue of our customer and community and employee surveys. So with that, I will yield the floor to Mr. McKay to introduce you to the initiatives upon which we are focusing on for 2025, 2026. Mr. McKay, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction. John McKay, Chief of Staff. As GM CEO Johnson said, we will be covering the 25-26 strategic initiatives and how those were formed. We'll be covering the 25-26 performance cycle, the initiatives themselves, and some next steps. Regarding the 25-26 performance cycle, RTD for staff uses a performance management cycle wherein goals are planned at the beginning of the performance year, which happens around this time of year. We monitor performance during the course of the year and review performance at the end of the year to determine how staff has contributed toward the goals and mission of the agency. Just to tie this back to the strategic plan, this is our strategic planning framework that is basically a representation of the strategic plan itself. It starts with the vision, mission, values as determined by the board. Then we go to the strategic priorities. These are the pillars used in determining how best to deploy resources, how best we can fulfill the vision, mission, values of the organization. The strategic initiatives and associated tactics are what we're talking about today. These are as GM CEO Johnson introduced, these are year-over-year or multi-year initiatives designed specifically to address some low areas of performance in as noted in the strategic priorities and as measured by performance data and the surveys, the customer, community, and employee surveys, and how this all affects every employee of the organization. The goal-eligible managers of the organization design tactics and goals based around the strategic initiatives and then filter those down through the organization so that each individual employee is connected to the strategic plan. And again, this is the strategic planning pyramid in full. The long-term goals of the agency are captured in the the agency performance scorecard that is the very center, both geographically in the strategic planning book and in concept. The scorecard is the center of the strategic plan. And then in an annual scorecard, we capture the strategic initiatives, and we'll show a snapshot of that a little bit later. This is what the agency performance scorecard looks like. This is what we refer to as the blue scorecard. This captures all of the metrics that lead up to or that trickle up to the vision, mission, values. This is how we determine how we're doing as an organization, determining the success outcomes of the strategic plan. And this is the annual scorecard. In the last year, we referred to it as the green scorecard, and it captured the 24-25 strategic initiatives of Back to Basics, People Power, Welcoming Transit Environment, and Customer and Community Connections. And there were four strategic initiatives, and each one had an associated tactic or tactics, specifically asset management, employee recruitment, employee retention, employee security, public security, customer experience, and community outreach. And these were the tactics that were designed specifically to improve performance in those areas. Moving on to the 25-26 strategic initiatives and how those were formed. We designed tactics based on a few different criteria. So on the far left, you see that those three overlapping blue bubbles in a Venn diagram. Any place on that Venn diagram where two of those bubbles touch is an area ripe for developing a tactic. So if something was below 75% in a survey, and it had a favorable response decline year over year, that was an area that could be examined. If there was a key driver and a negative or below 75% favorable survey response, that's another area. Especially if all three of them are true, then that's certainly something to take a look at. And I'll speak to key drivers here in a moment. Or alternatively, if there was a survey response that was below 50%, that was by itself a determinant factor, determine whether that was a good tactic for us to deploy in 2025-26. And lastly, and sort of new to this organization, is a key strength to maintain. So we saw that in our community survey results that there's a diagram that I'll get to in a moment, but we saw there was no room for improvement according to the let me put a pause in that statement. That not that there was no room for improvement. Well, let me get to the diagram and I'll explain better there. We looked at the survey results year over year, and this is just a snapshot. I won't go through all of them. For the committee members who are interested and for the members of the public who are interested, our survey results are posted on the performance dashboard website or webpage on RTD's site. This is just a snapshot of one of those, and we can see on the right-hand side that people indicated in the last year that they felt safe and secure while waiting on the train at a rate of 68% for rail, that's 62% for light rail, and 72% for commuter rail. So we saw that because the favorable response for the light rail was below 75%, and I'll show this key driver analysis in the next slide here. We saw that was an area that we could focus efforts in this year. And again, this is the key driver analysis specifically for bus, but we've done one for bus, both commuter rail and light rail, and also for some of our community surveys as well. And this is a ranking of importance of characteristics of service. Included here are frequency of service, hours of operation, bus train stops conveniently located, et cetera, et cetera. We ask individuals as they're responding to our surveys to rank as in terms of importance their feelings about service characteristics of RTD. We've seen through the customer and community surveys that frequency is by far and away the most important factor for service. And as I mentioned before, with respect to the community survey, we had only strengths to maintain. We did not have areas of opportunity. So it shows that we are deploying our resources in a way that meets the demands of the public. And you can see here that we're not meeting the mark in terms of personal security while waiting for the bus and the train. And that's one of the aspects of the strategic initiatives that we're going to be looking at this year. In total, these were the areas that we found, scrolling back quickly to this diagram. So of these service characteristics and tactics that we determined were areas that we could take a look at in 2025-26. These are the very specific metrics associated with those things. So related to service delivery, and I won't read through all of these over the next 3 slides. Frequency of service, on-time performance of vehicles, that bus and light rail services operate when they need them, et cetera. These were the metrics that we determined that we wanted to improve over the next year. And again, this related to the community survey, these were strengths to maintain rather than areas of opportunity, including that RTD provides access to places of employment, reduces traffic congestion, and provides affordable transportation options. And again, the community value survey was mailed out to a random sampling of households within the Denver metro area. And we find at RTD that it's important, even for those folks who don't utilize our transit services, it's important to instill value from the community in everything that we do. So we need to make sure that for the 90+% of people who don't regularly engage with RTD, that they still feel like we deliver value to the community. And here, without further ado, here are the 4 strategic initiatives for 2025-26, which include enhancing public trust, building a better RTD, service excellence, and customer and community connections. And associated tactics are public trust, security perception, professional development, and that's in terms of staff, advancing infrastructure, service delivery, police visibility, transit value, and fostering mobility. And those defined, I won't read through these either, but these are also included in the board report for this presentation. And as far as next steps, just grounding us back in the strategic planning process here, this is the strategic plan itself. We are capturing these initiatives in a scorecard that will flash up on the screen momentarily. But in early Q4 2025, which is right about now, we will be conducting some internal and external communications regarding the 25-26 strategic initiatives, both internally and with the public. And then we have already disseminated the annual scorecard for all employees for the 25-26 employee performance cycle. In the longer term, we do intend to convene regularly quarterly strategic initiative meetings among senior managers and the leadership team and directors of departments and divisions so that we can determine progress against the strategic initiatives for this year, and then regular employee performance check-ins to make sure that they're in alignment with the strategic initiatives and the strategic plan itself. And at this point, I will navigate. I'm using one screen here, so you have to bear with me for one moment. I have to go to our scorecard itself. And is that showing up on screen?
Yeah.
Yes, John.
Okay, thank you. So this is the scorecard. It is a burgundy color this year, so we will be referring to this as the burgundy scorecard instead of the green scorecard for this year. And this gets into a more granular level of the initiatives, the tactics, and the projects associated with them. So, for example, for public trust, this was one of the areas in the community survey where we could see that we received low scores, a low favorability in terms of survey responses, and this is an area we wanted to put up front at the very top of the scorecard this year. And just for an example, there's a project for an economic impact analysis wherein we will engage with the consultancy to produce a robust data-driven assessment for strategic planning, stakeholder engagement, and public awareness regarding RTD's critical role in the region's economic prosperity and quality of life. So in doing this, in employing this economic impact analysis, the metric that we're hoping to increase over time, or the responses to the survey, it's the percentage of community members who agree or strongly agree that the community's investment in transit provides value. Again, I won't read through each and every one of these. This is available now on the strategic plan website, and it's available in your packet as well. But scrolling forward, we are also building a better RTD, and this is with respect to professional development. There are some manager trainings that we're deploying in the next quarter, and also PDP usage. That's our professional development program funds usage. So we are tracking to see whether employees are using these funds. And we're not trying to increase it necessarily, but just tracking whether an increase in usage of these PDP funds, there's a corresponding increase in the percentage of employees who agree or strongly agree that RTD provides them with the tools needed to grow their career. Also for advancing infrastructure, this is led by our DCEO, Angel Peña. There are some infrastructure initiatives associated with that. Moving on to service excellence. There are some specific tactics related to journey mapping, which is an interesting concept for this year. There are two projects that were also in place last year during 24-25, and these were captured in the green scorecard from last year, including on-time terminal departures and operated trips. There's also a tactic related to police visibility, in which Chief Margano will be out and conducting some chat with the chief events out in the public and among RTD staff. He will be deploying bike patrols specifically along the W line and developing a couple of transit police substations in different parts of the district. And lastly, to customer and community connections, this was the returning initiative from the last year. And there are tactics related to transit value and fostering mobility. And of particular interest to a lot of folks is the very last one on here. It's the fare bundling. This is a process where we will be developing a market strategy to promote ticket as fare bundling for cultural and sporting event venues, and to conduct outreach to major venues to bolster transit utilization for high volume events. So basically, this means that if you buy a Broncos ticket, that you could potentially use that ticket to just board the light rail vehicle after you get out of the game. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Directors, questions, comments? Director Chandler had her hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chairman Guzman. Although I'm not a part of this committee, I often attend, and so I appreciate it. I do have a couple of questions. You did talk about that the survey was mailed out to random sample in the Denver area. Does that also include some of the outlying areas? Because I think what's happening is, my constituency doesn't have as favorable an outlook as what you're presenting. And I think that's because they don't have the service that you're talking about. So I just want to have a little bit more flavor of who received this survey so that we can determine if this is more, the Denver-centric area that's actually receiving those kinds of services.
Mr.
McKay.
Thank you very much. To your point, Director Chandler, this is a survey mailed to everyone within the Denver metro area, and I say that not as to exclude any particular part of the district. That's all 8 counties within RTD. This is a statistically valid sampling. They use a sampling plan, and it takes into account demographics. And I believe there were, and you're testing my memory at this point in time, I think there were 700 households that responded to the survey. I'll have to go back and check my numbers again on that, but the survey responses are available, as I said, on the performance dashboard website, and it does take into account all of those within the Denver metro area. And as I said, I mean, this is a statistically valid sampling, so it's not an exact representation. It is a very repeatable survey. If you were to give this same survey 100 times, 95 times out of 100, you would get within a 3% plus or minus range on the survey based on the survey responses and the end value of the people who participated.
Director Chandler, is that okay? Do you have something else you want to add?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I wanted to add just an additional comment, if that would be permissible.
Yeah, please.
Yes, so thank you very much, Mr. McKay, for your response, and Director Chandler, thank you for your question. One notable element that I'd like to raise for everyone's awareness is keeping in mind that Mr. McKay did indicate within the Denver Metro Service Area, that's everybody within the RTD district. And more specifically, when we're looking at the Community Value Survey, we are asking specific questions relative to whether or not they've actually utilized the RTD services, because we're trying to understand what might entice these individuals, what might be the value in which RTD services provide to this singular constituent. So to the point that you raised, it's not just about those that are utilizing the services that may find it to be advantageous, but it's more or less trying to ensure that we have a clear-cut understanding what might we do as an agency to entice those individuals that may not be utilizing the service to actually try the services. Mr. McKay, is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity to add that additional information.
Director Chandler, did you have any follow-up?
Not on that. I have another question, so I'll let the other directors go and then I'll circle back.
Well, I sure do appreciate the cooperation. Thank you. Sorry, for the record, Board Chair Julian Bouquet has joined us. Director Nicholson, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My ears perked up, especially at the mention of integrated event ticketing with major venues, in part because we're having a study session tomorrow on major event ticketing, and that integration is particularly, I think, an opportunity for us. I was hoping that you maybe, I think it was Deputy CEO Pena or GM CEO Johnson can speak a little bit more about where that's at in terms of the discussions that have been had so far and the prioritization within the department and conversations that have the work that's being taken place both with our vendor and with some of the major venues in order to facilitate that effectively.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yes, I will start and I'll yield the floor. So just for everybody's edification, what we're doing tomorrow is about high volume events and how we provide service, not about ticketing specifically. Just wanted to caveat that because there's a lot of different elements involved. For those that have been on the board some time know that I have been talking about leveraging high volume events in conjunction with various venues to ease the impact relative to how we are moving people, as well as those that may be new to transit as we move forward. There are some collective conversations that have ensued quite naturally when we think of where we're situated and our coordination with, say, for instance, Denver's Visitors Bureau and things of the like. We are looking at various avenues whereby we can be on the front end of that. I do know, Secretary Nicholson, that you broached in the executive committee about legislation relative to potential legislation. Let me caveat it that way in reference to doing this. I have had some experience in different areas of the country relative to that, but more to the point, what's really interesting is that our Chief Communications Officer has been broaching fair bundling and some next steps, and that will be covered tomorrow. So don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but want you to know that these conversations have been ongoing for a period of time. Just as before you were on the board, you were interested in tap to pay and you came on board, and that is something that staff had already been working on for a period of time. So wanted to provide that color to let you know that we haven't been sitting idly by on our hands, that these have been a myriad of activities that have been going on for a period of time. And I think it's quite important that everybody understands that these things don't happen overnight, especially when you're dealing with a multitude of venues and recognizing that some may be indigenous to Denver, some may have corporate headquarters located in different parts of the country, but these conversations have been ongoing. Mr. McKay, I will yield the floor to you to add additional color. I just wanted to provide those broad brush remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add to that, the strategic planning process and the goal planning process for employees has not kicked off yet for the 25-26 year. That's going to be undertaken fairly soon here. But the managers and directors of divisions are going to be taking all of the initiatives and all the projects associated with them and building personal goals based on them during the performance planning process. So that's how we hold accountability for these strategic initiatives, as every manager will be tackling some of these elements, and so that's why there's a diversity of thought in all of these initiatives, and they will be filtering down through their parts of the organization to ensure that every single employee can touch on these things in the course of their work.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we point out for the record, Director Peggy Catlin has joined us. Good morning, Ms. Director Catlin. It's good to see you. Director Larson, your hand was up next. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood the timing and relationship between things. These strategic initiatives are tied to the 5-year strategic plan for 2021 to 2026. What is the timing again for when we're going to start working on the subsequent strategic plan that I guess will be 2026 to 2031? Is that starting soon?
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very kindly, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Larson, for the question. If you recall, at the last Performance Committee, we came before this body with a summary scope of work, whereby that would inform our scope of work that we would leverage for a solicitation. As we move forward, we're in the process of getting that out on the street. For all intents and purposes, there's a timeline, and we can resurrect those materials as that timeline was provided and is included in the previous month's the previous Performance Committee's packet that outlines the timeline. But ultimately, what we're aiming for is to have a successor strategic plan that would come to fruition in around August or September, so we wouldn't miss a beat. But keeping in mind, these initiatives are things that we leverage as we are individual contributors of staff to the organization, and those would be ongoing. And quite naturally, in the event this board adopts a successor strategic plan, keeping in mind the work that's been ongoing, I would doubt that we would put aside trying to build the public's trust, but we would look at that holistically. So I hope that basically gives you a glimpse into where we are and what we're doing as we move forward.
Yes, thank you.
Vice Chair Gooch and Ritter, you are next.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So, as I hear from constituents, it's oftentimes I hear that they wish there was improved information around like customer alerts, understanding where the train light rail is at any given time, and if there's any deviation from what was planned, they feel like they don't know. And so my question is there, I don't see that reflected in any way in the annual scorecard. Is there any opportunity to incorporate that? Just if there is, would love to kind of hear about how we go about that, or any color you can shed, I would appreciate.
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you. I'll start and I'll yield the floor to my colleagues. Vice Chair Gooch and Ritter, thank you very much for that. As it relates to real-time information, that's been a challenge for this agency. I'll stand in my truth. I believe everybody's aware of that. This organization has leveraged some antiquated technology. We have been working on this for the past year, whereby we have removed track sensors and actually using GPS, global positioning, so we could actually ascertain where the train is in the system. That feeds into our public information display system, the PIDs as we call them, going forward. So this is a work in progress, and we anticipated getting better as we move forward, and this is fully been incorporated throughout the entire network, working in tandem with our Chief Information Technology Officer, as well as with mobile technologies and those individuals within rail. We expect this to come to fruition in short order. I will leave it to Mr. McKay to explain to you where that's being captured quite naturally within the initiatives, because keeping in mind that pyramid that was shown, there's individual contributors. So there's people that are in different work units that feed up into all of this collectively. So Mr. McKay, I will yield the floor to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of points. With respect to the survey results, that's the access to information or access to service disruption information was something that previously showed up on as a marquee thing to address in previous surveys. It did not. That was not reflected this year. That's not to say that's something that we're ignoring. If you look to the scorecard under the journey mapping element underneath service excellence, that's one area we're tackling this. So this is an exercise in creating journey maps for individual customer profiles, so including first-time customers, youth, limited English speakers, et cetera, that we're understanding what interaction with the system looks like, and that will bolster communication efforts once we understand better what it looks like to use our services to those individuals. Also, there is an effort to unify all of our apps. There are 5 different apps right now that we use, including the MyRide app, including I'm drawing a blank on our security app. Transit Watch. Thank you, Deborah. I saw you mouthing that. Transit Watch. So we have 5 different apps right now there's an effort underway to roll them all into one. And there will be an opportunity for push notifications specifically, so that if there is a service that is being disrupted and you are a person who is subscribed to that particular line or route, you will receive a push notification directly to your phone. There's also an opportunity for the use of our PIDs, and that's a public information displays, and our I think they're called universal advertising totems is the correct terminology for those that are on platforms right now and adjacent to the rail corridors. That there is an opportunity for our communications teams to put out information on those, now that they will have direct access to the back end of those, and we'll be able to put out better service alert information on a regular basis.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that response. I appreciate it. But I mean, I guess my thought based on the response is that we all, I think, agree that this is an important area topic. And I know that there is work in progress to ultimately address that, but I feel like what I'm hearing is the answer is once that work is done, we'll start measuring this. Because I understood it's in customer journeys, but I feel like that would very much get lost in the sauce of customer journeys. So just from my perspective, it's important. We're not great at it. Shouldn't we be measuring it even though there's work in progress? And so that's all I have to say.
Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Chair. To your point, we still measure all of these elements with respect to our survey results every year. Just because something doesn't float to the top in a particular year does not mean that we will ignore that particular area of or service characteristic. This is something that we want to make sure that all of our survey responses are continually improving, and I think we've seen that significantly in the last couple of years. That there's been a significant uptick in both our customer and community survey responses. There's an upward trend in nearly every single aspect of service. I think if you look at our customer survey results from last year in terms of commuter rail and bus, there were 19 different aspects of service that we measure, and 19 out of 19 for bus and commuter rail went up year over year, and 16 out of 19 for light rail went up year over year. So it goes to show that even if something does not rise to the top of the most critical or most negative responses to our surveys, that we're still focusing effort to improve across the board.
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Guzman, and thank you, Mr. McKay, for that response, and Vice Chair Gucci-Ritter for the follow-up question. I would be remiss if I didn't state that we have individuals within the organization that have specific jobs to do. And quite naturally, just because it's not captured, as John said, in that manner, doesn't mean that people aren't working on it collectively. And I would just use myself as an example when we've had discussions around my goals. I have a full-fledged job description in which there are responsibilities that I have, and that goes further to the elements of the individual contributions. Because while we may be using the strategic initiatives for individual SMART goals, there's still a job description that comprises the vast majority of one's performance as we move forward. So I just wanted to share that for everybody's edification, because it is critically important, and I don't want anybody to think because it's not captured in the manner in which you've inquired that we're not doing anything about it, because that's just not true. And I'm not indicating that you're saying that, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that these are things that are being worked on in the organization quite naturally. We are people moving people, and recognizing that real-time information is critically important, as that's how we're communicating with individuals, as the schedule is a commitment that we make when we say we're going to be there. So we have to have an understanding where we are with that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I am going to call on Director Peggy Catlin and find out if she needs to ask any questions, because she looks like she's calling in and not on a regular Zoom. It's *6 to toggle the mute settings, just in case. I'm gonna give it a second. All right. Before I go another round, just a time check. It is 9:08. We only have until 10 o'clock this morning to be able to complete the rest of our meeting, and the deep dive hasn't happened yet. So directors, if you can make your next round of comments quick, short, sweet, and to the point, so we can move on to the next topic, I would really appreciate that. Efficiency is going to be key in our meetings right now. I do have one thing I'd like to say before I pass the baton back, and that is thank you for hearing both the concern from the community and from the directors that we need to fix the public trust. Enhancing public trust is one of the strategic goals. Seems great. How we get there, there's a plethora of tactics I'm sure that we'll see come to life through this process. But at a high level, I really do appreciate seeing that. I have one particular question. I saw it a few times. Advancing infrastructure. With respect to that, I am concerned, because we're still working on a lot of state of good repair, that's not also listed in conjunction with advancing our infrastructure. What I don't want to have happen is a runaway narrative that we're going to only focus on, again, and be the agency of build, baby, build, and neglect the work that we have done to this point. And so I'm not sure how that fits in here, but I want to make sure, because I didn't see anything with respect to maintaining state of good repair for next year, that I'm not approving something without bringing that consideration, as it's a high level concern for me for any future work that we do, and approving any funding with our joint agreements for Front Range Passenger Rail or Northwest Rail, that we don't just approve the building, but we approve the maintenance of those infrastructure matters. Madam CEO, your hand went up.
Yes, thank you very kindly, Chair Guzman, for your question. Keeping in mind, when we talk about back to basics, data good repair, transit asset management, all of that is rooted in the infrastructure. And quite naturally, as we're talking about advancing infrastructure, that's exactly what we're talking about, the continuity of our state of good repair, so we can make good on the investments that have been leveraged nearly 30 years ago moving forward. So this is a continuation of where we are and what we're doing holistically. And so I just wanted to share that, because when we talk about advancing infrastructure, that has to do with, our facilities, i.e. how we have antiquated bus facilities, and keeping in mind that we're in the process, as we look at where we are collectively, we are looking at a new bus maintenance facility from a planning perspective, which is currently in the regional transportation plan, for instance. Looking at light rail modernization, as we talk about light rail level boarding, light rail signal system, a new light rail facility. All of those things are part and parcel. That's why it's advancing infrastructure, keeping in mind we're building on what we have, as opposed to just talking about the replacement of perhaps trackway and things of the like. That's why this is a more expansive and inclusive term as we move forward. Thank you.
Mr. McKay.
Thank you very much. Just to add on to that, the Deputy CEO, Angel Pena, he comes from organizations where it was important to him that he came from the Boston area and the Washington, D.C. metro area, where these were older systems that he was involved with state of good repair efforts in those areas, and he's bringing that expertise and experience with him here. It is his philosophy that it's not good enough just to replace what was maybe not up to speed, but to make it better as it goes forward. And so it's maybe creating a service or a facility enhancement in addition to making sure that the foundation is correct, but enhancing lighting or providing other customer amenities that make it easier for people to buy into that. And one of the initiatives associated with building a better RTD is mapping out. Actually, I'm sorry, I think it's under public. Enhancing public trust. Building trust and infrastructure specifically. He wants to map out all of the potential service disruptions over the course of the year to give the public a better understanding of what they can expect with respect to the service disruptions, so that the speed restrictions last year that we all encountered, the coping panels project, those are the types of things that would be built out into a roadmap, so that people will have an understanding if their particular line or route might be impacted, when might that be impacted, if there's wire replacements on the end of the E line, let's say, that should be in a roadmap, and people should know well in advance that may impact their ability to utilize transit on a particular time frame. So this is a holistic future forward effort, not just on the infrastructure that we have now, but the improvements to the infrastructure that we anticipate going forward.
Thank you. I just want to be very clear. I think we need to own that narrative, and that needs to be explicitly stated somewhere in this, because if not, what it read like to me is we're just building more infrastructure and we're open to it. And I don't think that's what you're trying to communicate. What you just said, that was the piece that I was missing, not understanding that as we do our state of good repair, we're also going to advance technology and whatever additional matters we need to put in there. We also have the fleet transition, or the facilities and fleet transition plan, other things that are coming up that we need to have conversation on. So it makes sense that we would be advancing just how we're doing that and not letting the train run away from us, but keeping control of that narrative and what that is really important. Thank you. I'm going to return quickly to Director Chandler. She's been patiently waiting.
Thank you again, Chairman Guzman. My question has to do, I guess, kind of all-encompassing with this, is that I think part of the trust that factor that has been lost is not being captured somehow, because it seems odd that the survey results are so good, yet ridership is down. So what is that disconnect? And I don't know why. I don't know why there's a disconnect between the survey results are just way up here and everyone's so happy and satisfied, but yet ridership is down. So maybe that for me would be to figure out that dot that's missing. So I don't know who to ask that question to, but I think that's something that's extremely important.
Madam CEO.
Yes, so thank you very kindly for the question, Director Chandler. And when we talk about the connectivity, quite naturally, people are utilizing the system and they're satisfied with the system. However, there's other people that aren't utilizing the system, and there's a myriad of factors that contribute to that. And we are leveraging our relationships as we move forward to address that. But more specifically, we have to keep in mind that the City of Denver Central Business District still has an abundance of office vacancies. There are people not coming into the office, and that's been the traditional model when you look at transit usage. As I was coming of age, we used to say we're only good as our last rush hour. There's not a stable rush hour any longer, because people are using it on the shoulders and off-peak times for other reasons, as opposed to just merely using it to get to their place of employment. But leveraging the partnerships in reference to like downtown Denver Business Partnership, or leveraging relationships with South Denver with commuting solutions and things of the like, those are the different elements and avenues that we are utilizing to ensure that individuals that may have some trepidation and angst about utilizing the system can. And back to the point when we're talking about the utilization of it for other activities outside of traditional work access, That gets back to the point about, bundling fares with an event venue so we can introduce that to individuals that may be using it for other purposes. So that's just a snapshot into what we're doing at a very high level, but it's a lot more in depth than that, but just wanted to give you some perspective relative to where we are and what we're doing just collectively. Thank you.
Director Chandler.
Yeah. Yeah, if you just want, sorry, my camera, there we go. I guess I get that. I understand that, traditional things are not happening here in Denver anymore. I mean, I work downtown. I see it. There's not as many people here on the streets at various times. But I think part of it is that trust factor has gone. And I think if we build back up that trust, that we might see ridership, regardless of whether it's a commuter time frame or not, but ridership in general. I mean, I used to ride the light rail a lot more because it was available, had better times, et cetera. I don't ride it as much just because of that. So I think there's a myriad of things that we need to do, but the paramount thing for me is to build that trust back. And if we can build that trust, I think the ridership, regardless of its traditional or non-traditional timing, will come back. And I just think that's something that for me is paramount. And I'm not sure how to fill that gap in between trust and ridership, but to me that's really where it's at. So that's just my comment. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you, Director Chandler. Director Nicholson, land this comment, this discussion, so we can move on to the next one, okay? Thank you.
I will do my best, Mr. Chair. So as the chair has indicated a couple of times, big decisions that come from RTD, big advancements like tap to pay and like the integration with venues take time. Can take years of work behind the scenes and work by previous boards, work by previous staff members. I'm wondering, when you're looking at this kind of evaluation, both of the agency, of the general manager, and of staff further down, how do you factor in the types of work that are required to deliver on something, but are not the actual delivery of it? And what I mean by that is, with regard to, for example, the facilities and fleet transition plan and the work that's being done right now to prepare for that with one facility, that's many years out before that facility would be delivered in practice. In looking at these sorts of, processes, how do you account for effectively measuring work being done that is years away from being delivered? How do you measure good work versus inadequate work on something that's that far away?
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for your question. So getting back to what you talked about, there are various steps as we move forward, and quite naturally, you have to have milestones. You have to ensure that you're starting with a plan. And in order to ensure that you're going to meet some of those outlying milestones, it has to be something where everybody can rally around. I made reference in my previous comment, to the regional transportation plan in and of itself. Quite naturally, with DRCOG serving as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as written in statute pursuant to us being recipients of federal dollars, there are a myriad of different things that have to take place in order to bring that to fruition. Just like when you ask me questions relative to, what about an extension of the gold line or what have you. All of this, there's things that are in the making that you have to do. We just can't say tomorrow we're going to plug this in because there's work that is needed to be done. There are preliminary engineering and things of the like. So getting back to the question that you posed, there's different phases for the work that needs to be done. And quite naturally, when we're looking at somebody's performance review period, there are critical elements that need to take place. And that gets back to the whole aspect of it being a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And also keeping in mind that we're contributors within ourselves as individuals, but there's going to be interdependencies within the organization. It may call for coordination with a different jurisdiction, a jurisdictional partner. Quite naturally, as we look at where we are with joint service, for instance, if we had not done the Northwest Rail Peak feasibility study, there would have not have been any foundational aspect relative to having conversations that we are currently leveraging. And so when one may have thought, hey, what is this for? Recognizing that RTD doesn't have money as a standalone agency until 2042. Basically, this was work that was done as we keep going forward, and this could be reminiscent of what we're doing with the unfinished fast tracks project. So there's an individual within the organization that had a goal of finishing this as we go forward, but this is going to be built upon for different elements that are going to come in the near term, midterm, and the long term as well.
One more, and then we're moving on, Director Nicholson.
Yep, this is a very quick one. So for each of those goals and those milestones, do we have like written documents for each of those projects with the milestones that we're expecting staff to be hit, and then in their performance reviews and their plan, like are there documents that you get to look at that say like, here are the milestones we expect to hit for each of these projects, here are the milestones that each of these employees are expecting to hit?
It sounds like you're asking, sorry, it sounds like you're asking for a project plan that does not fall under the auspices of the board. That's the general manager's responsibility in overseeing employees. Is that I want to be clear about your question, because if we're going somewhere we are not supposed to, I'd prefer to pull you back up to the balcony of the board, and we'll get out of that area that does not belong to us for personnel matters.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I'm asking you a question directly. So now you're talking to me.
I didn't ask for any documents. I asked whether they exist and whether that's something that the GM and CEO reviews as a process of understanding what the milestones are. So I believe it does fall under performance.
Okay, as long as we're not diving into anything below that, I think that's a fair question, but I know the answer. So Deborah Johnson, CEO and General Manager of RTD. Are you general managing?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson. As I stated in my previous comments, quite naturally, relative to that pyramid, that individuals have performance goals and plans. Now, I don't look at every single one within the organization. There is a method relative to ensuring that there's a second level reviewer. So those that are on the leadership team, absolutely. And with those on the leadership team and their direct reports, do I look at those? Yes, I do. And quite naturally, it's even broader than that, outside of performance plan. If we're working collectively and we have a project plan and we're working with third parties, or we have something inside, we have to know what we're doing. You can't measure what you can't manage. So of course we have plans going forward. We wouldn't be able to submit and get monies through grant opportunities if we did not. And more specific to our points here, we have to ensure that we're being good fiduciaries. So of course we have project plans, we have charters, and a myriad of other documents as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to end that item and move on to our next one. It is 9:25, folks. If we can wrap this one in 30 minutes, that would be great. I need a few minutes at the end for members of the board that are present about the timeline going forward with respect to the performance review and the closing out of this year. So I just want to keep everybody aware of time. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to take a look at the key organizational performance metrics for Q4 in 2025. This is part of our in-depth discussion about finance as the final pillar of the year. I also want to thank you to Director Larson for helping craft the way that we approached this year's deep dives. I'd like to hand the floor now to CFO Kelly Mackey, as well as Chief of Staff John McKay, to present this item. It's yours. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. So I will lead things off, and then I will turn the floor over to Chief Financial Officer Kelly Mackey at about slide 9 here of our presentation. As introduced, this is the agency performance scorecard As referenced in the previous presentation, there is a specific strategic priority of financial success that we're talking about today, which lives on within the middle of the strategic plan if anybody's interested in looking at the printed copy. And for your reference, this information is available on the performance dashboard, which is a website that was created in May of this last year, and serves as a repository for all of our not all, but a good portion of our performance data, our financial data, survey information, and the scorecards. Specifically to financial success, there are a few different measures of financial success as adopted by the board in October of 2024, specifically with respect to the blue scorecard, the blue agency performance scorecard. The performance metrics are budget variability, cost per revenue hour, monthly reserves, net revenue coverage ratio, fair value, and financial trust. And that financial trust I'll get into deeply, or more deeply than other elements here in just a moment. There are specific performance definitions, and I've included the descriptions here in how we calculate these specific things. Moving to the scorecard itself, budget variability, cost per revenue hour, and fair value are all areas that have improved year over year. That's why they are indicated here in green. So the budget variability through July of 2025 is lower. The lower the number, the better at this point, so that we're not overspending at this point in time. Cost per revenue hour has decreased year over year. Right now, at to date, I believe this is through July also, that number sits at $328.18 per revenue hour. The monthly reserves, you see that's gone from 1.14, the ratio is 1.14 to 1.01, so it's still in the black there, but it previously was better. The net revenue coverage ratio has increased from 0.7 to 1.1 through July, and with respect to the proposed 2026 budget, that number continues to increase as currently contemplated in the draft budget, or the proposed budget rather. Fair value, we see that there was a 4% increase year over year in the percentage of customers who agree or strongly agree that fares are reasonable. Moving on to the financial trust index, and I'm going to be popping off of this screen here momentarily to go to the way this is calculated in sum, but this is something that is unique to RTD. This is a measure that we crafted in the last year. The board adopted again in October of 2024. This is a financial trust index that weighs three different aspects of external entities' view of our financial health as an agency. So, if you will recall, in August of 2024, the Office of the State Auditor released its audit or its performance audit of RTD, and they use typically for reviewing state agencies, they use 9 specific financial health ratios. RTD did meet all 9 of those financial health ratios with respect to the audit from 2024. We use that as 50% of the weighting of the financial trust index, along with bond rating. 20% of the weighted index is in relation to bonds or bond rating, and then the average of community survey responses of those 4 different questions about RTD's financial management or resource management, good financial steward of public funds, the community's investment in transit provides value, and RTD's financial reporting is understandable and transparent. And like I said, give me one moment while I pull up this other. This is much more difficult to do on one screen here, so bear with me. Here we go. So this is in sum, and it's kind of hard to see. I'll scroll into the extent I'm able to. This is how this is rated or how this is calculated. You'll see that all told that we received a 4.2 out of 5. And again, this is a unique indicator that we developed within RTD. This is not something you'll see at another transit agency, but I think it is a good representation because this financial health, this is how the state views us. Bond rating is how investors view us, and community sentiment is obviously how the community views our services and our financial management. And so, in sum, this is a pretty good snapshot of the community writ large, their view of our ability to provide good service and to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. So, with this, give me one more second. I'm going to go back to the other presentation, and then I will be handing this over to Kelly Mackey. Kelly, when you're
Mr. McKay, appreciate it. Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer. Each month, a financial status report is included in the board briefings. This report displays a dashboard with sales and use taxes, ridership, and fare revenues, as well as the unaudited financial statements. And following the conclusion of the fiscal year ending in December, an annual comprehensive financial report is produced, audited by the independent auditors, and is presented to the audit committee and the full board as a recommended action. So next slide, please. Today we are discussing with the Performance Committee, RTD's financial results and position year to date through July 31st, 2025. Next slide. This discussion is not only to provide an update, but also in preparation for the 2026 proposed budget and long-range financial plan discussion items in the Finance and Planning Committee scheduled for October 14, 2025. I will also share these year-to-date financial results in that meeting. Today, we will review actual results versus budget and then versus prior year. The figures here are in thousands of dollars, and this view shows that the variances of actuals to budget and year over year is in gray. Overall revenue is $631 million versus a budget of $768 million, which is $137 million unfavorable, due primarily to federal grants, where we are expecting to draw them down later in the year, as we discussed in the July Finance and Planning Committee meeting on Q1 financial results earlier in the year. Staff generally spreads the budget for grant funding across several months, and the actual timing depends on when the application is approved and when RTD can start drawing down money with the funds released. Next, fares of $34 million are $519,000 favorable year to date to budget and are $1 million lower than prior year. Sales and use tax of $493 million was $13 million unfavorable to budget and grew $6 million or 1% from prior year, which is consistent with sales and use growth trend over the past several years. This puts pressure on the agency in future years because costs typically rise at a higher rate with inflation. And keep in mind that the 2025 budget was approved by the board in November of 2024. Other revenue, which includes advertising revenue and investment income, came in at $46 million or $20 million favorable to budget. $17 million of the favorable variance is from investment income. Other income grew $619,000 from prior year. Director Banker did request in September that we break out state grant revenue. State grant revenue was $2 million year to date for zero fare for youth, and that funding soon ends on January 31st, 2026. After reviewing with our auditors, Rubin Brown, they did recommend that RTD not actually break out state grant revenue in the financial statements due to its immateriality and inconsistency with other transit agencies. However, we are able to provide that amount separately. Operating expense year to date was $543 million versus a $788 million budget. More than $100 million of this favorability is due to timing of East Colfax BRT expenses. Keep in mind that the project is a pass-through to the City and County of Denver. Cost was budgeted conservatively in 2025 due to the project's complexity and grant timing, and funds will carry forward into 2026. Other favorability in operating expense is related to slower and more conservative spending. Operating expense increased by $51 million from the prior year. Depreciation of $109 million was close to plan and just higher than prior year. Interest expense on debt of $74 million is $10 million favorable to budget and $2 million better than prior year due to refinancing that took place after the 2025 budget was adopted. In total, expense of $809 million exceeded year-to-date revenue of $631 million for a decrease in net position of $178 million, which directly impacts reserves. This was $137 million favorable to the 2025 budget of a $314 million decrease in net position. Next slide, please. Moving on to the financial position, these are the results of money in and money out and ending balances as of July 31st of 2025 versus July 31st of 2024. The critical component is what's available to RTD potentially to spend after subtracting all liabilities and other obligations. Cash investments and account receivable of $1.2 billion have declined $99 million or 8% from prior year to date. Cash and investments are down 116 million or 11% from prior year, and accounts receivable are up 17 million or 8%. Fast Track's fund balances of 526 million declined 32 million or 6% due to restricted fund decline to 279 million from 323. Base system fund balances of 576 million declined 96 million or 14% from prior year. The total of these subcategories is 2.3 billion, which declined 227 million or 9% from prior year, and is directly related to the decrease in net position on the prior slide. So to summarize what I've discussed so far regarding the financial results, revenue is behind expectations due to timing of grants. RTD has a positive expenditure variance offsetting the revenue shortfall, and RTD has a strong, though declining, financial position. Next slide, please. Historical trends is what I'll review next. These charts are included in the monthly financial statements that you have seen. The far left year is 2019, and on the left side, the top line, the red line, is the trend in cash investments and accounts receivable. The yellow line is base system and the blue line is Fast Tracks. You can see that the financial position of RTD strengthened significantly through 2023 and then began to decline in 2024 and in the 2025 budget and actuals. The flip side, if you look at the right side of the slide, is what do we owe on the balance sheet. Since 2019, this chart starts to show a nice trend over the past 6 years in big obligations that RTD has started to pay down. And the blue section is the total debt profile, everything in the principal amount of debt owed to our investors that was borrowed in 2019 is $3.9 billion. And we're left with a current outstanding principal balance of $3.3 billion at the end of July 2025. Part of that reduction is actual debt service that has been paid, and a lot of it is also due to the debt refinancings that have occurred in more recent years when RTD had the opportunity. Staff refinanced debt for interest savings and took out some of the principal balance at the same time, reducing the risk to RTD. The pension obligation is 154 million, down from 304 million in 2019. You may recall in 2022, with the collective bargaining agreement, the Amalgamated Transit Union and RTD worked together to address the large pension obligation. The pension plan was closed to new employees for represented employees going forward in 2023. There was also a large payment of 160 million, a lump sum put into that plan that reduced the risk profile to RTD. Next slide. Moving into fund balances, we have broken this down by types of fund balances. The fund balances are RTD's assets minus its liabilities. They are also known in the private sector as owner's equity. It's essentially the savings that are left over if RTD were to pay off its obligations. We have a column for base system, a column for Fast Tracks, and a column in gray for total, followed by where these were in the prior year and the year-over-year variances from July 31st, 2025. Restricted fund balances are restricted by contracts and agreements such as debt agreements. That's money that has to be set aside to service debt. For example, we have a restricted TABOR reserve that's required of all government agencies in Colorado to maintain a 3% reserve. And those funds showed here as 115 million are essentially untouchable for covenants. Next are funds that fall under the board auspices, which are remaining funds after moving unrestricted reserves. Through fiscal policy that the board has adopted and through discussion, there are essentially 4 different fund balances. The words fund and reserves are really interchangeable. The operating reserves have been established as 3 months of operating expenses, excluding depreciation, which is 301 million. Next is the capital replacement fund established through the budgeting process. And while we have a good cash position, we identified 261 million to set aside for capital replacement. That has to do with state of good repair, the transit asset management plan, and having that funding available. So we do not have to, this year at least, borrow money and pay additional interest. Our 5-year financial forecast shows this capital replacement fund will not be sufficient for the 2026 through 2030 timeframe. We currently have 192 million in the Fast Tracks Internal Savings Account, known as FISA. And that is the fund balance established by the board several years ago to put money away for Fast Tracks projects. And finally, we show the unrestricted fund balance, which is a credit balance of 93 million, primarily due to the delay in 2025 grants revenue. This balance was a positive 58 million at the end of 2024. Next slide, please. So keep in mind that restricted funds are contractual or statutory requirements such as TABOR, and the other items are under the board auspices. The board has the authority to spend, and only the board can appropriate those funds. Next slide. In wrapping up, while revenue is behind expectations, we expect federal grant draws toward the end of the year. And the good news is that expense is quite favorable to budget. However, the primary challenge is that spend continues to exceed revenue, which naturally results in a decline of RTD's financial position, though that decline year to date is better than budget. RTD's financial statements may look like the agency has a lot of money, but essentially it is spoken for, and RTD needs that money to maintain what it has in the system. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation for the financial update.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKay and CFO Mackey. I appreciate the presentation. I would open the floor to any questions from directors. It is 9:43, so just keep in mind any time commitment we've got to get done. I don't see any hands raised. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Let me turn my camera on. I didn't expect to get to go first. I figured Director Banker would jump in before me. I wanted to say, one of the things that I really appreciate about the management of this agency over the last few years has been the financial management that both GM CEO Johnson has done, that now CFO Mackey has taken over, and obviously that Doug McLeod, may he enjoy his retirement or whatever he's doing now, has done, because I believe we are in a much better financial position relative to some of our compatriots around the country at the moment. I was wondering if you can speak to where you see the long-term challenges in terms of our financial picture, and we'll get into more of this when we come up to the conversation around the 5-year financial forecast. But what are the pitfalls and the warning signs in terms of what those of us who are going to be on the board for another 7 years should be thinking about right now? Often, executives at companies are incented to make the short-term choice that is makes things look good in the moment, and maybe is not the thing that is as easy. We saw that with 20 years of light rail maintenance that didn't happen and then had to happen in 1 year. Where do you see that pitfall now at the moment, and what are the trade-off choices that maybe we're making at the moment to that hit on that? If you can talk a little bit about that.
I see Madam CEO's hand up, so I'm going to call on her, and then she can hand off to whomever she chooses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson. I'll yield the floor to Ms. Mackey, but I would be remiss if I didn't start out by framing this quite naturally as we talk about the large investments that need to be made with maintaining and then ensuring that there will be a transit network for the near term. When I say near term, I'm talking about tomorrow and the tomorrows to come as a whole. You referenced this, Secretary Nicholson, relative to choices that were made by individuals that preceded us regarding this agency, and now we are playing catch up. I think it's incredibly important that this agency does not lose sight of what the RTD Act states, that we are responsible for providing mass transit services to this great region. And in doing so, that is very labor intensive. And we need to ensure, as we've talked about before, that we can maintain our assets in a state of good repair. It's keeping in mind that we have to ensure that we're looking at fleet replacement cycles. Also to the point, there's a lot of unknown variables relative to where we sit currently in reference to alternative fueling technologies. Regardless of a propulsion system, there are still commitments that need to be made in reference to being sustainable, and that could be done with a near zero NOx engine and a clean diesel bus versus something else going forward because it emits only 0.01 of a particulate. So we need to think basically about our facilities as a whole and where might they be located, considering that real estate is prime as we move forward, but ensuring that we are doing that with intentionality and looking at where we are today and we can plan for the future, because as it relates to our current revenue streams, sales and use tax, 70%, give or take, and Ms. Mackey could speak more about that. But then again, you know, we're having a discussion as it relates to fare box recovery. While that's critically important, you have to think about it through the lens of subsidized public services. Basically, they all, you know, you're not writing a quick little check or paying a fare before you call 911 for emergency services, and public transport is treated differently in this country than, you know, fire service, getting an ambulance service, or any type of emergency responding entities. And so as we look at it collectively, I would say we have to have a laser-like focus on our facilities, looking at the useful lives benchmarks and ensuring that we are investing in that appropriately. So as we move down the pike in 10 years, we know what it is that we should be doing and not kicking the can by virtue of saying, well, it looks okay. And you did that rail reconstruction back in the summer of 2024 for 5 intersections. So that's what I wanted to provide. And then I'll yield the floor to Ms. Mackey, because quite naturally, we have been talking about all of this ad nauseum as of late.
Thank you. Yes, Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer. I agree. Things that are on my mind are continued cost increases, right? I mean, it's of late been quite high. And if you look at revenue growth, excluding things like Colfax BRT that are one time, revenue growth has been 1% consistently on average over the past 5 years or so. And so that's concerning to me because costs would naturally grow faster than that. And we will dive more into these details in the Finance and Planning Committee because we have not only the proposed budget, but we have the long-range financial plan, which really clearly lays this out for you. So you'll be able to see it very well in there. But it was also in the 2018 long-range financial plan that was done by WSP, right? So that's a really good place to start if you want to go back to look at that one first, and we'll touch on that more. I think revenue diversification is on my mind a lot. It's an issue. I think we need to find other sources of revenue. Cost increases are really interesting in transit and learning. There was a Bloomberg article that was put out September 26th. It's worth reading, and it's about lack of suppliers for buses and how that really boosts the cost of buses. So there's definitely unique cost implications that are impactful to transit that you don't necessarily see in other industries.
Just so you are aware, Director Nicholson, we will have a second opportunity to spend a lot of time working on this in finance and planning after we review the FIFE that you've returned to the committee. So go ahead and follow up with your question, and then we can see if anybody else has a opinion or question.
Yeah. CFO Mackey, you raised a really important point about cost increases, and obviously, you know, tariffs are one piece of that. We just got done addressing a program that has seen substantial cost increase and is currently seeing, you know, on the order of 25% per year increases in costs that we mitigated somewhat. And I was wondering, are there any other parts of the budget out there that you're aware of that are seeing those extensive, you know, really large, you know, double-digit increases in cost, where you're seeing sort of warning signs about like, oh, this department or this maintenance or this whatever, something else in the budget that is growing at, you know, 20% per year regularly, and is something maybe the board should be paying attention to as a result?
Yeah, I would like to answer that in the Finance and Planning Committee meeting, if that's all right. It's a good question. I think, I don't know if it's over 20%, but some things that stand out are I've seen some big insurance bills come across and related claims and things like that. And I think looking at the transit asset management plan, there's definitely some areas where it's going to impact RTD in the near future where there's big expenses, such as the Platt building is 50 years old. It's not necessarily laid out in detail of when that will be replaced or when they'll be invested in. So I will dive more into that next week, if that's all right.
Thank you, CFO Mecki. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to say this part. This is the performance committee. So looking at the performance of how we've done this year, given what was passed on to you, CFO Mecki, as you transitioned into the new role, I am pleased to see that we are not doing terrible. I am disappointed that our sales and use tax hasn't kept up. I was afraid that was going to happen last year and the year before. So thank you for the trend line that demonstrates that I wasn't out of my mind when I said, why are we being so rosy about this outlook? I have the same question, I'm sure, unless Leeds brings back something that is a little bit more grounded in what I think is reality on the ground level at the street and the bus stop. I don't see people spending what they were spending before. And so I think that's something we really need to concern ourselves with. We know how we get revenue is something bound by our statute. But I also think that we can do great damage if we don't think through short-term decision making to make popular political points as elected officials. And sometimes that means that we have to use the revenue sources that we have to the fullest extent possible. And so I know that there's a pending discussion that will potentially be going to Operation Safety and Security about what we do for marketing on our buses and trains. But as a source of revenue, I think it's important to consider the long-term effect of not having a revenue source, since you brought that up. And I know that we're not going to run this agency off of fares. I mean, we'd be charging $100, $300 a ride if we were going to try and break even as a private entity, and that's not how this works anywhere in the country. We fought really hard as an agency to true up the fares, make them easy to understand, help everybody move around. We have an amazing discount program that we have, done better than other places too on, and who we allow to use it. So I'm with you on it. I'm looking forward to the budget discussion happening in finance and planning, but thank you for presenting on the finances as a performance metric and breaking it down, how we look at it with the Office of the Auditor here in Colorado and what our internal gauge of that is. I do appreciate that work from both of you, Mr. McKay. All right, thank you. We have one matter to discuss before we end this meeting, and this is for everybody's awareness. Give me one moment while I start sharing my screen. All right. Does that look okay? I am using a single screen as well.
Yes.
Thank you. 2025 assessment timeline. This committee is responsible for shepherding that through to the board before the end of the year. In an effort to make this doable, I wanted to share this timeline with you. It's very high level. I've got some coloring in to do here. But essentially, this is how it's going to break down. As we discussed last time, I am working with Vice Chair Guchenritter, Charlene Pelegi, and the human resource team to make sure that we have all of our tools ready to go. And we are reviewing the assessment tools. I am waiting for an email on that one so that Vice Chair Guchenritter and I can jump in and start reviewing. We want to make sure that we have the performance assessment tool ready for each director to participate in. That means you'll get a link, you'll fill out your survey, you'll have an opportunity to opine, and then the performance score and the pay increase table is correctly adjusted for this year's goals and the way that we have weighted things. And then we want to make sure that we had this discussion with you. From October 1st to October 6th, which is this meeting, we're laying out the timeline. On October 6th, we will present it. So here we are. Sorry, I'm catching up with my notes. Beginning on 10/28/25, this is where you guys are going to want to take notes, directors. GM CEO Deborah Johnson is going to provide the board of directors with the self-assessment. This will be done in executive session. It is a privileged conversation. The only person who has auspices to share anything outside of that meeting will be the employee under state law. And with respect to our contract and our employee, we want to make sure we maintain that. The communication will be among the 15 board members who are all invited to attend. It is expected that we arrive to this one in person, not by electronic means, because this is a human conversation first. From 10/29 to 11/7, November 7th, you will receive individually an identifiable link for your access to the General Manager CEO Performance Tool. You will have 7 business days or 9 calendar days to complete that evaluation. Written commentary attached to your email, and it will be identified in all reports. There is not an option for anonymity in this process, as follow-up from the General Manager CEO to the commenting director may be necessary for clarification. Remember, this is both a critique, but also commentary on the work that is done. And so if there's something that's misunderstood, it's just very helpful for the General Manager CEO to be able to communicate with the director who submitted any kind of comment to ensure that the communication is crystal clear. If the submission is not received by the deadline of 5 p.m. on November 7th, 2025, it will not be included. That's a hard deadline. There will be no extension of time given at this stage. There's a reason why. We have a timeline to get this before the board, and extending these timelines cannot happen. So these are finite. I'm giving you the heads up since now, at the beginning of October, that by 11/7 at 5 p.m., your review work must be submitted. I'm going to remind everybody, please refrain from utilizing any type of artificial intelligence to compose your commentary or written feedback. This is our job. If you need assistance, please reach out to a fellow director, to myself as chair, to the vice chair of our performance, or to the board chair. I'm sure all of us would be willing to lend a hand. HR from 11/10 to 11/1, HR will compile a preliminary report based on submitted director assessment submissions. Remember, these are only those submissions that made it on time that will be included in that final product. From 11/12 to 11/14, we will prepare committee materials for the performance committee. There will be an agenda, General Manager CEO Johnson's self-assessment, and then the preliminary board assessment report will be disseminated at that meeting. That will be the executive session held on the 17th. Sorry, I got to catch up with my notes. On the 17th, we'll have the opportunity to engage with General Manager CEO Johnson, and upon conclusion of that meeting, so when that meeting is adjourned, we will begin a 24-hour clock should any director feel the need to adjust any of their scores or their comments. You will receive a 24-hour window only to submit those back to the board. I know it can seem short, but if it's important enough to do an adjustment to your comments, you will need to do that quickly. And I want to incentivize you to get it done quickly because Board Chair Julian Bouquet and I will need to audit all responses before we finalize anything. And staff still does need time to prepare the final report that we bring forward as recommended action to the board. If we can do this in a timely manner, then sometime between November 19th and 21, once our audit is complete, if there are no changes, it'll be done sooner. If it is needing to be updated, it might take a bit longer. Then once that audit is complete, we will have a final report that will be brought through this committee and recommended to the board. That may happen before the executive committee's meeting. It may happen immediately before the board meeting, depending on timing. But I would remind everybody, a bit of the crunch is that the holidays begin that week. So we have Thanksgiving, and then we are in a rush to finish our work before the December, January holidays begin because we don't typically have meetings in those months. So we need to make it on time for the last board meeting of the year to ratify the finality of this review period. So I thank you for your dedication and your participation in this. Let's see. December 2nd is the last opportunity without calling a special performance committee and a subsequent board meeting for the board of directors to complete this review and assessment agreement. So that is the goal. I want to just make sure that everybody understands that's how we're going to try and land this plane. Are there any quick questions? I'm going to stop sharing at this point. I don't see any hands raised, so I hope you captured that. If you don't have it, I'd be happy to send it out to you individually. This has been a lot of work for the general manager and I to negotiate all of the dates and times, making sure that board staff is aware of what's going on, making sure that we have it all laid out for you so that we can land this plane as smoothly as possible through the end of the year. I again want to thank you all for your commitment to getting work done on this committee and coming prepared. It is really noticeable, and we've had a really easy time doing that this year. Behind the scenes, your vice chair and I have spent quite a bit of time working with our staff to make sure that everything is internalized here at RTD, but that we have the proper controls in place to oversee it. And we will continue to do that work and meet our commitment that we will finish our work plan before the end of the year. So I think we're on a good track. I'm 2 minutes over time. I apologize. General Manager CEO Johnson, is there anything that you need to add?
No, Committee Chair Guzman, thank you very much. I'm good.
All right. Very quickly, our next meeting date will be Monday, November 17th, 2025. It will be at 4 p.m. and the meeting will be for the presentation and discussion on the General Manager CEO's self-performance appraisal. The meeting will be held in person at Blake Street. All directors are highly encouraged to attend, and the majority of our meeting will be in the executive session. That is under the auspices of this committee. So fair warning, I need 5 of you, please, to arrive at Blake, or let me know if you will be absent ahead of time. It's really critical that 5 members of this committee be present. Thank you. Are there any other matters? I see none. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move, Busick.
Second.
Thank you. We will adjourn the meeting at 10:03 a.m. Apologies, General Manager, CEO, and staff. Thank you so much for your participation. See you on the 17th.